Hi, in this video I want to provide you with a demo of the Central Management Console from SAP BusinessObjects. So the Central Management Console I'm going to show you is related to an installation of the BusinessObjects 4.3 Support Pack 1 environment. And so there's not been a lot of changes in the design of the CMC between 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. So there's really not that big of a learning curve from an administrative perspective, but there have been some changes in the capabilities or the features of the platform. So to get to the central management console, the CMC is one of two interfaces, two main interfaces with Business Objects Server. The first is the Launchpad, which is the end user facing interface. And then there's the administrative portal, which is the CMC or the Central Management Console. And so to access the CMC, you would bring up a browser, go to the server name or the location where that points to your installation of business objects. In this case, I'm using a local server, and then type in /BOE/CMC. BOE CMC are in all caps, and that's because we're using Tomcat as our web server. So once you log into that URL, you'll type in your system name with the port, and this is using the server name, since this is a single server installation with port 6400. And then the username and the password, and I'll just type in my administrator password here. And then the authentication type, I'm just going to log in here as enterprise, and I'll click log on. So when you log into the CMC, you'll notice that we have a drop down at the top, and then there's a button bar, a navigation bar here on the left side, and then we have three columns of options in the main part of the screen. So this is three different ways to navigate the same listing of features. So all the features that you see in the middle here are listed in the drop down here in alphabetical order, and then also listed by icons here on the left side. So depending on how you use the system as an administrator, you might get accustomed to one over the other or a couple of different ways to do things. But with the drop down, so if you go to the drop down, you see access levels. Access levels is there in the defined column, and it's also in the listing over here on the left side. And I'm not sure exactly which one, but it's in this listing on the left side. But if you look, there's folders there, and then there's folders there. Clicking on any of the three locations will take you to the same place. So, and then up here at the top, you have welcome. I'm logged in here as administrator. You have the administrator preferences for the CMC. So if you click on that, it'll pop open a dialog box here. You can change your CMC preferences, change enterprise password. You've got some web intelligence options here. So from an administrative perspective, you can change what happens with Webby. And then the same thing here with Crystal Reports. And then you have help. So you have your help facility here. I wanted to point out here the about function, because sometimes you'll be asked what version of Business Objects you're running. You can always go here to find out. And you'll see I'm running 4.3 Support Pack 1 Patch 7. And then you have your log off button. Some things I wanted to point out on the interface here. So whenever we administer the system, there are some main elements that we use, primarily connections, universes, reports, and then users and groups. But then there's a lot more to that combination of elements. You can administer all those options inside of the central management console here. So we talk about connections. Here's a listing of connections that connect to data sources. So whenever you click on connections, it'll open up an interface here that'll give you a listing of connections by folder. So whenever your universe designers are developing anything, they'll see this listing of connections by folders. You can also click on this connections list. And so the connections list will show us there's a listing of connections here. So we can administer these connections. You can click on a connection like insurance claims. This points to a local CSV file. You can go into its user security, so who has access to work with that connection. You can look at the properties of the connection. You can do a relationship check to see what its dependencies are. Organization, you can move it to another location, or you can delete the connection. So then we can go home. You can go have a look at your universes. So if you go into universes here, you'll see we have a listing of universes by folder, and then you also have a complete universe listing. This is just a flat listing similar to what we had with the connections. So you can see that I've got 3 universes listed or published to this system. Insurance claims here is the one that I've been using. So if we look at the context menu, you have universe security, user security, properties, relationships under tools, move to and organize, and then delete. So universe security has to do with the security of the universe itself, whether or not you want to lock down objects in the universe. User security has to do with who has access to the universe and what can they do with it. And then the other universes have similar options. And then we also talked about reports. Reports are kept in different locations in business objects. So you can keep reports in folders, also in personal folders, but then you can also keep reports in inboxes if they were sent to your business objects inbox. So if we go have a look at folders, I'll just go into this one here. You have a listing of all the folders, so you can see the folder structure that the administrator user can see. So you can pretty much see everything. You can go into any of these folders just by clicking on the folder on the left side and see a listing of objects that are in that folder on the right. So if you go into, say, Web Intelligence Samples, you can see all the Webby folder or the Webby reports that are kept in that folder. You can also see the type, the description of the Webby report, any scheduled instances that it has. So you can see that Sales Analysis Dashboard has one scheduled instance and the last time that the report was modified. As an administrator in the CMC, you can also do a right click and see the context menu of the report. You can go look at the report just by clicking View, and it'll open up the report in the viewer. So here, let me resize this just a little bit. And this will open the Webby report. So there's the report itself. You can edit the report if you need to make a quick change to it as an administrator without having to go into the Launchpad. But in this case, I'll just close it. And then you can also do other things with it, like you can schedule the report to run. You can look at the instances, the latest instance of the report, since we see one instance here. You can look at its history. So if you open up the history, you can see the reports that have run. So on August 26th, I ran one instance of the report. It was successful. It ran in 13 seconds. And it's a web intelligence type. And then there's other options here, like you can create new objects within this folder and so forth. So that is a listing, a quick description of connections and universes and folders. So now you can also go in and administer your users. So you can click on users and groups. And what you'll see here is there are three options on the left side. You can see your group hierarchy, which contains a listing of all of your groups, and then memberships of those groups. So like the administrators group, it has the icon of 2 users here, so that tells you it's a group. And then within that group, there's one user, the administrator user, who I'm logged in as now. You can go look at a listing of everyone, so this is all the users in the system. And then if you had any groups that were a member of a group, you would be able to open up, say administrators had a subgroup, you would be able to open that up, click on the subgroup and the group hierarchy, and then click on the user. But I don't have any groups in this list in this system right now. You can look at a flat listing of all the groups. You can also look at a flat listing of all the users. And then with the context menu with any of these groups or users, you have certain options like being able to join a user to a group, finding out what groups a user is a member of, and then there's a few other things. You can create new users and new groups and check relationships and so forth. So with that combination of options, we still haven't applied any sort of security. You can apply security in several different ways, and just very quickly, if you wanted to apply security on a folder, there's a couple different ways you can do it. First of all, you can go to the Manage dropdown, and you can pick top level security and pick all folders. So what this does is this will tell you that this will allow you to set security at the top level folder so that your security could inherit down to the subfolders. And so this is telling you you've chosen to set security at the top level folder. I'll click OK. And so now this tells me that the administrator has advanced rights, everyone has advanced rights. So you could click on advanced and you can see what rights the user has applied. But I'll save the talk for security for another session. But that's how you can go in and check your security. You can then go into a lower level from the top level and check, say, Web Intelligence Samples. Who has access to Web Intelligence? If you right click on the folder and pick User Security, you can see the administrators has full control and it was inherited from the top level. everyone has no access. That was also inherited from the top level. And that tends to be a best practice. The everyone group should not have access to anything but view only access to the top level. That way, if you add a user, they automatically become an everyone user. Then they won't have access to anything until you apply access for them. And that's it for the folder. So that idea of how we set security applies to pretty much everything. So we can go back into universes, you can go into manage, top level security, you can look at all universes, and this would set security on the top level. So you can set rights here and then have that inherit down to the subfolders or subfolders and universes. You can always go in and look at the universes. I'm sorry, not universe security, but user security. And then so you can see that the administrators group has full control that's inherited from the top level, and then everyone again has no access to that specific universe. So you can always go into any of the other objects like personal folders. Typically personal folders are applied just to the user that owns it, not to everyone. You can look at connections, web service queries, OLAP connections, and set security in the same way. So that's with our users and groups, and a quick discussion around security. There are other options here, like looking at the license keys that are associated with your connection. So you can go into license keys, and you can see we have this one license key that was applied. It gives us no named users, 60 concurrent users. It never expires. So we have 60 seats that users can use to log into this environment. The first 60 people that log in would get access to the system. The 61st person would not have access until one of the first 60 signs out and frees up a seat. Sort of like working in a conference room that has 60 seats and people moving in and out of a room. Named users are assigned to specific users, so I could say that the power users, if we had 5 power users, they're named users. They would always have a seat, so those seats would be reserved specifically for them as a named user, as opposed to a concurrent user. So if I go home here, you can also go into authentication, and authentication will give you the different methods of authenticating into business objects. The default method here is enterprise, but then we very often use LDAP, SAP, and WinAD, depending on the setup of the system, whether you're using Windows or Linux. If you are an SAP user or not and use the SAP authentication, you can integrate those systems in with business objects. And then the last thing I want to show here is the instance manager. So with the instance manager, you can go in as an administrator and you can see all of the instances that will be running, all the instances of reports that will be running in your system. So if you have all of your users that are scheduling reports, you can go have a look at any of the reports that are running. So if I uncheck status here, you should be able to see, there's the Webby reports, some Webby reports that I did. So I've got some promotions here. I've got one Webby report that ran. You can go in and look at the instances of those reports and look at the status of the promotions here, the jobs. So you can go look at all these together. You can filter all these out by specific owner, by status, and we have multiple statuses here. You can look at the object type, so if you're specifically wanting to look at Webby reports, you can do that. You can also look at completion time and next run time. So if you want to see what's going to run within the next 24 hours, you could pick next run time between, let's say, 10:05 at midnight and 10:06. And so that'll show you the next 24 hours. You can tell what the load is for the scheduled jobs that are going to run, so you can make sure that your system has enough resources to be able to service that number of jobs. So now if we go back home. So that's a quick tour of the Central Management Console. I hope this has been helpful.